Hey, common scientists. We're coming to you this week on the topic of veganism. What does it mean to be a vegan? What are those crazy people up to these days? I think I remember hearing about it for the first time and thinking it was just a wild concept. So we'll get into a little bit about veganism. Just a reminder for our listeners, we are common scientists. The keyword is always common. We bring some research to the table and refine and talk about it together to get a better understanding of the world, a better understanding of each other as common scientists, and hopefully to bring you into the common scientist community. So we're going to kick it off a little bit with a game, and I'm going to kick it right to Dre, and he'll describe a little bit about what we're going to do on Common Science right now.
Yeah, so I have this game called Vegan or Not Vegan. It's really just flashcards, what they called it a game. So we're just going to rapid fire kind of go through these foods and I'm going to have Lauren and Aidan guess quickly whether they think it's vegan or not.
Yeah, and I want to shout out, if you guys are tuning in on the podcast channel, you can see us play this game live on the YouTube channel. So check it out if you want to see me kick Aidan's butt in this vegan game.
Definitely. So, marshmallows.
Not vegan.
Correct. Marshmallows have gelatin. Chewing gum.
Vegan.
Ooh, not vegan.
Not vegan. They often contain glycerin and aspartame. Is that how you say that?
Aspartame,
Okay.
yeah.
French fries.
Depending on the oil.
Not vegan. Yeah, probably because of the
Correct.
oil.
Usually vegan, but if you get them from McDonald's, they're cooked in animal fat, so not vegan at McDonald's.
Whoa.
Huh.
Wine.
Vegan.
Vegan.
Not vegan.
Wow.
Wine is often filtered using filtering agents such as bone marrow, milk protein, and fibers from crustacean shells.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Pills and tablets.
Not vegan.
Not vegan.
Not vegan. They're often tested on animals. They also kind of have like a gelatin capsule, all that type of
Man.
stuff. Orange juice.
Please be vegan.
Not
Please be vegan.
Or wait, vegan. Yeah, I think vegan.
Not vegan. Some
What?
orange juices are made from a concentrate containing vitamin D3, which is obtained from lanolin, which is from sheep's wool.
What?
Man, what can
Orange?
vegans eat?
Right?
Nothing.
Coca-Cola.
Not vegan.
Not vegan.
Vegan.
What? What?
I know, Coca-Cola.
Just throws that in there.
Yeah, just Coke. The one thing
So
you don't
vegan is not necessarily healthy.
Spicy sweet chili Doritos.
Vegan.
Not vegan.
Vegan. They are commonly known as the only vegan Doritos. I am obsessed.
Wow.
Crayons.
Not vegan.
Not vegan.
Not vegan because they use beef fat for their smell and like texture or something like that.
Crazy.
The $5 bill.
Oh man. Vegan?
It better be vegan or there's no such thing.
It is vegan. Diet Pepsi.
Not vegan.
Not vegan.
Not vegan is correct.
Aspartame.
5, I think that's the pound.
The 5-pound notes? That's different than the $5.
Yes.
Not vegan.
Vegan.
Not vegan.
Man, my confidence is tanking.
Why is it not vegan? Why or vegan?
The 5-pound has traces of animal fat to help anti-static and anti-slip
What?
properties.
Huh.
Oreos.
Not
vegan.
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 What?
Oreos are one of the biggest
Are
things in
you
the vegan
serious?
community for being like accidentally vegan, even though it's got like a cream filling, but nope, no animal products.
Wild.
Red Bull.
Not vegan.
Vegan.
Red Bull is vegan, points to Aidan. It does not contain like real taurine, and taurine is from animals. Vegetable soup.
Not vegan.
Not vegan.
You got to be careful with. Yes, the answer is not vegan. You got to be careful with vegetable soup because a lot of times it's in
The
like
broth.
animal broth.
Mm-hmm.
Refried beans.
Vegan?
Vegan.
Not vegan. You have to get specific. I can't remember the brand that we get, but it's a specific one that is vegan because they have animal lard and sometimes milk in them.
Yeah.
Smoky pig Pringles.
Smoky bacon.
Bacon. Sorry, I don't know why I said pig. That's the vegan in me. You eating pig. You're not eating bacon. Smoky bacon Pringles.
I I think probably vegan. It's a wild
Vegan.
card.
It's gotta.
Vegan.
It's gonna be a surprising one.
Icing sugar,
Not vegan.
Vegan?
not vegan. Often contains egg whites. Also normal, like granulated sugar is usually not vegan either because they use bone char to bleach it to make it white.
Wild.
Figs,
Bone char. Wow.
like like the fruit, a fig for listeners.
Vegan.
Vegan.
Many consider
What?
it not vegan because like wasps go in there and like die and get digested. So I guess some people consider that not vegan.
Oh my gosh. Skittles.
Skittles.
Vegan.
Vegan.
They are vegan. Fresh pasta,
Not vegan.
Not vegan.
not vegan. They usually contain like eggs. Bagels,
Not vegan.
correct, not vegan.
And we're back to marshmallows.
There we go.
Dang.
Wow.
Not too bad, not too bad.
Had to have had like one
So
more
who
right
won?
than you.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
We'll
about
have to
that
go
one.
back and
We'll
listen to
have
the tape.
you're
Audience,
right.
you guys decide. Let us know. I'm sure you guys are keeping score.
Okay, so we better unpack this a little bit. What the heck is veganism?
So I can't remember what episode it was in, but at one time you and I talked about veganism, and I said, yeah, the philosophy. Or no, you said diet. And then I
Yeah.
said philosophy, and you said, So I am definitely going to hard press that it is actually a philosophy, and that vegan is, or the diet is just one part of the philosophy. It is a philosophy to live a life as a human being without the exploitation of animals.
So Wikipedia would disagree with you, I think. And I think that their conjecture is that there are several different classifications of veganism, and you can be a, what's the word? You can be like a philosophical vegan, which would be like a lifestyle vegan, or you could be you could be morally vegan, which would be what you just maybe also, those two are quite tied, or you could be environmentally vegan, which is so it's like all categories of why you made the choice to not consume animal products, but we can clearly hear, listeners, that Dre thinks that it's morally wrong. Right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I am.
Yeah.
Because some people are vegan for health. I think it's more common to be vegetarian for the health.
Yeah.
And veganism is a little bit more extreme than that, where people start getting, a lot of times veganisms are pretty fanatical about protecting animals' lives and make sure they're not suffering. Nevertheless, I do obviously think that causing unnecessary suffering to living beings, specifically like sentient beings that can suffer, animals, in other words, is wrong. And the reason why, I mean, number one, I think if you go to the Vegan Society, which was founded by Dorothy Morgan and her husband, Donald Watson, and they coined the term vegan, and they don't describe it as a diet. They describe it more as a doctrine or a philosophy. So whether Wikipedia describes it as a diet or not,
So
I'm going to go straight to the source.
So Merriam-Webster, again, not the source of veganism, defines it as a strict vegetarian who consumes no food, such as meat, eggs, or dairy products that comes from animals.
So if you're just learning what veganism is, listeners, the first exercise, you might have to just go back and listen again, because that means all of those products that we thought might have been vegan had animal products in them, which could be really counterintuitive. I know it was for me, especially for like the fruit that was considered to be not vegan and a few of the other things that we were wrong on. So some people take it really seriously.
Yeah, they definitely do. And I think a lot of it, I mean, it depends on, there's a lot of power in who does the defining. And I think that, like, Dre, your perspective on it being a philosophy is a fascinating one that I had not considered. Like, that it is this, encompassing idea of not exploiting animals, and then, like, the diet is a result of that. Care to expound upon maybe other areas beyond diet then that it is manifested in your life, identifying as a vegan?
Yeah, so that's where I do kind of have to check myself and ask myself, am I a vegan, or do I just practice a vegan diet? Because I definitely am staunch and unyielding on the fact that it is a philosophy and not just a diet. To make like a comparison is just like Judaism, a religion, has a diet that they're supposed to follow, but you wouldn't call Judaism a diet, right? It's a religion or a philosophy or a way of life that includes, that has a dietary preference, right? Or a dietary kind of code. So that's definitely all of the kind of vegan thought leaders or whoever that I read about and listen to, they consider it a philosophy, because you, in general, veganism, even in the Vegan Society's definition, where they say veganism is a philosophy and way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose, right? So those are the people who've coined the term. I think they kind of have the right to say what it is, right? Other than like a dictionary or like a Wikipedia, and ever how people want to say it, twist it or whatever. So it's just kind of weird to me to kind of make a derivative of it in that way, because if you are vegan, by the original definition, you are choosing, yes, you are quote unquote a strict vegetarian, which is kind of a more historical term, because vegetarianism was a term before veganism. Veganism is like a stricter offshoot of it. So you are a vegan because you don't want to cause animal suffering. So if you're not going to eat animals because you don't want animals to suffer, then that obviously is going to spill into other areas of your life. So to your question, Aidan, where else is it in my life, and where I have to question myself as if I'm a vegan, is because then the next step, I think, from a lot of vegans is clothing, right? Can't wear leather, can't wear wool, and other things that would require animal suffering. And I think I do. I'm not sure if I have any leather. I'm sure I do have some leather shoes or something, and maybe something. I don't know if I have anything that's wool. I don't know if that's kind of a thing I've ever worn. But I don't think I've bought, since I became vegan, any leather. And it's something that so I've been vegan or at least been following the vegan diet for just over 2 years. So obviously I'm learning more and more about it. Even like some of those, like when I first, so someone got that game for my wife and I after we became vegan, and when we were playing it, we were looking like y'all, like completely like what? Like, we had no idea, like wine and so many beers are not, because there's something called isinglass, which is how they filter beers, and that's like fish bladders.
Whoa.
So it's like that's not, and then we had to have this whole thing with honey, like do we care about bees? Can bees suffer? And I've now adopted like no eating honey, no using beeswax products like lip balm and stuff like that, because it seems that bees might have the propensity to suffer, and that farming bees, or whatever you want to call it, usually leads to what looks like suffering. Therefore, I should not participate in honey, beeswax, etc., anything that comes from bees or the exploitation of insects. So I'm trying to expand and be like more of a true ethical or moral vegan, and live true to the philosophy. Because even before I was a vegan or called myself a vegan, tried to aspire to be one, I kind of had this philosophy kind of molding within me of limiting the amount of suffering in the world. Specifically, it was there a little bit when I was a younger teen, mid-teen. But then once I got to college and learned more about the world and the plights of like women throughout history, the plight of the gay community here, but also like specifically like in Russia and stuff like that, the plight of certain races throughout the world, et cetera, the plight of the impoverished. That's where I was kind of like, this level of suffering is unacceptable. I can't just sit in Minnesota in modern America living a relatively plush life and pretend like everything's okay. I need to be more cognizant of this. I need to try to learn about and do anything I can to help suffering in this world, or at the very least not add to it. But it wasn't until just a couple, and that was like college age, like 18, 19, But it wasn't until a couple years ago where I extended that suffering to animals, in which my wife, she was a vegetarian for a little while, I don't know, 8 months or something like that, 6 months. So as we got engaged and got married, she just started posing the questions to me, and obviously I wasn't going to like ask her to cook meat for me or anything like that. I thought that would just be absurd, because she cares about animals. And she just started posing the questions like, what do you care about this and that? And I'd already had this philosophy of suffering. So then she's like, all right, like just watch this Earthlings documentary, because you don't want to be, I think
what was the name of that documentary?
Earthlings by Joaquin Phoenix. It's one of like the vegan class, like the one they hold on top of like all else. Mm-hmm. But it's really old, but it's still really good. It's like the early 2000s or something like that. But she was like, yeah, watch this with me, because one of the things that I think is a little bit disingenuous is the people who are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna eat meat and participate in this torture of animals, but I won't watch the videos. Like, it's too much. Like, it's too sad. I'm like, well, the videos are too sad, but then you still are contributing to this industry that's doing that to them. So I just didn't want to be that. So I was like, all right, I'll watch it. Like, I'll see how I feel about it. And as I was watching Earthlings, I was like, fuck grind, all that stuff. And I was just like, this is not okay. Like, this is not okay as like this moral being that has kind of terraformed Earth and has really, I don't know, I think as humans we try to aspire to these ideals, and I think our treatment of animals in pretty much all aspects, from pets to factory farms, is really a slap in the face to all of the romanticism that we regard ourselves with. So I was watching that with her, and then she kind of like started hitting me with some arguments about suffering. Can animals suffer? Is your philosophy to limit suffering? If you continue to eat animals, are you causing unnecessary suffering? And when I couldn't argue myself out of that based on my own ideals, I became a vegan.
Wow. It sounds like it was quite a journey. I just gotta say, like, it sounds like there's a lot of ups and downs on that journey, and it involved a lot of soul searching and question asking. Lauren, do you have any you're looking either skeptical or puzzled, or like you have?
I think I disagree on a lot of different fronts, and it's not a debate that I've had to engage in often, especially on the moral grounds. So I think also
I want to put a plug in for, rather than like debate, use it like a truth-seeking conversation. Like, we're not two sides getting she's a little frustrated with me, but I wanted to put that out there.
Right, yes. In common science, we do not debate. We truth seek and sing Kumbaya. Yes, of course, we're truth seeking. However, like, within the context of this conversation, there is a debate, right? Like, we are not here today to debate, but there is a debate. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in a family that practiced hunting, in a family that also practiced farming, of beef. I have killed my own meat and then also consumed it. I watched like the death take place. And I don't believe that those instances were unnecessary suffering. Now, I have a lot of problems with commercial farming, and specifically commercial farming of meat. However, I grew up not engaging with commercial farming, like practicing primarily hunting only. So my grandpa has cows. One cow can produce a lot of beef. Like 2 families could go in on a cow to share. It would fill your freezer for a whole year. My grandpa himself, or the like known butcher nearby, would go out and like quickly end life for the purposes of consuming only what you need. Now, on the point of consuming only what you need, growing up in rural Minnesota, and also growing up raised by parents who who grew up in an era where like there was this big meat publicizing, like they did not know how much meat is necessary. Now, being a common scientist, I know that the amount of meat that you might need for X amount of protein or other essential amino acids is extremely low and can be supplemented, obviously, with other things. However, I believe that it's more natural to consume things that are not pharmaceuticals, and so I would rather consume meat than like take a pharmaceutical that might be made to like supplement a diet. And I'm sure there are also like vegetables and things you could supplement that are truly vegan and are not like a pharmaceutical, but I just think that the idea of causing unnecessary harming is not something that I've been engaged with despite eating meat my whole life, which is a claim for sure. And I'm sure there are instances when I've bought commercially farmed meat like unintendingly, but especially now that I've become more conscientious of the argument in my adult life, I've done everything that I can to both limit my meat intake and also only purchase where I know it is as moral as it can be, because I'm not naive to think that there isn't like a natural order of life. Like even the wolves hunt like the smaller animals and other animals hunt other animals, right? Like I think that it would be normal for humans to hunt and to consume, right, as it has been throughout human history. However, I am also acutely aware that we are misusing and abusing our power. So I guess that's where I stand and where I disagree with some of the philosophy that you just brought to the table.
Yeah, the two things that I would largely push back against are, number one, you making a claim that there was no unnecessary suffering by killing an animal. That seems like a very bold claim to make, which I can almost see like very little, like how, like, okay, let me just ask you, how was there no unnecessary suffering?
I don't know. I do not think that death for the purpose of something higher on the food chain than you is unnecessary. I think it's necessary. And so by that argument, suffering is necessary at some places, like within the food chain. And yeah, if something came along that was above us in the food chain, that would be like the natural order of things. And then I too could be considered.
So might is right. So might is right.
Like being stronger? What are you saying?
Yeah, like where what I hear is that because we have the capacity to, we might as well. Which
Because we have the capacity to what?
To kill and consume. Like
Because evolutionarily we have engaged in consumption of meat and are not just carnivores, what's the word, omnivores, if you eat both meat, and are classified as omnivores. I do not think it's morally wrong to consume meat, and I definitely do not think that killing for that purpose is causing unnecessary harming. I would say it's causing necessary harming.
Yeah, I think so. My question would be, because I also like, I mean, I see like both sides, and so I'm curious, Lauren, what makes it necessary in your eyes?
It's a good question. I think that my understanding of necessary is in that most naturally, and especially for women, consumption of red meat specifically gives like iron and other supplementation, especially to a female body that loses blood each month. And I know that there are some positive benefits of consuming, specifically in this context, red meat. I didn't focus my research so much on that particular like question or defense because I didn't anticipate talking about it in this light, but that's okay. But I do think that my definition of necessary then includes like the minimum amount of some meat that would provide for you enough to have a non-supplementally induced like diet. So I think that there are alternatives where you could purchase like X amount of things that would supplement whatever vitamins you are missing. But I would have a hard time believing that you could do that without processed food, because my philosophy of eating is to eat the least amount of processed food possible, and that like in that way you are living your most like possible natural life. And I would think that that would include some amount of meat on like a monthly or every other month basis, but it could be really low.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my understanding of necessary.
Is nutrition, basically. Another, like,
Not supplemented nutrition.
We can, non-supplemented
Because you can find a vitamin
nutrition.
for everything.
We can definitely dig into the common science of nutrition, and I'm sure Dre has a lot of good information on that. I think the other piece I do see in the necessary camp, if we are to set up these camps, even though obviously life is gray, is when it comes to hunting in particular. I mean, there's immense like cultural rituals that are developed and built around them. And like from the bringing it back to our comfort episode and the comfort crisis, where Michael Easter is an author, and he went up to the Arctic and went for a hunt with I can't remember the name of the guy, but he went for a hunt, and he describes the experience of like taking the life of an elk, I believe, as one of the most profound like spiritual moments of his life. And then like whether or not that is necessary can be up for debate, but like that could be the other argument I would see for people calling it necessary, is like this cultural and spiritual and all that component, which I wanted to bring up. And
I appreciate you just bringing that to the table, because I think that's probably also a part of it for sure for me, for like two reasons. One, growing up hearing the Bible verse that says like people have dominion over animals wherever that's at, regardless of what I believe about what that means. It was ingrained in me growing up. I heard it many, many times. It was the justification always, right, is because God said. I don't know exactly what I think about that piece, but I think it was a part of what informed my identity today for sure. And then I think to the second point of the spirituality piece of like understanding and feeling moved by the experience of hunting. I would deeply agree that when you kill your own food to eat, you appreciate it on a much, much different level, and honor not only like the life that was lost so that you could have that meal, but also all of the other lives in that species. So because I grew up like hunting pheasant specifically was what I most often participated in hunting. I went deer hunting as well, but I was never the one to actually shoot the deer. My brothers were a better shot than I. But even in the several times where I killed a pheasant and then brought it home and like stripped it and plucked it and prepared the meat and prepared the meal with my grandma, and like all of that time and energy and understanding and seeing made me just really appreciate and empathize for like the meal that I was having. So I don't know that makes it like okay morally, but I do think if everyone had an experience like that, we wouldn't be having the environmental challenges we are with overconsumption of meat, and hopefully too we wouldn't have to deal with as much commercial farming, because I think commercial farming of meat specifically is pretty horrific. But
yeah, there's a big disconnect today in terms of meat consumption in a city, like in amongst urban people versus those who get out of the
but
city.
I also too, like, I hear you and I respect you a lot for saying like, no, these are where my moral grounds are, and so this is the decision that I had to make for me, and that makes like there is no alternative for like based on your moral grounds. And so I think that that's extremely honorable. Dre. He nods.
Yeah.
You guys said a lot there.
yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely where we're like that last part you just said about my beliefs is definitely where I diverge, because I don't know that I respected much of anything of what you guys said.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, this idea about necessary. You guys are using the word necessary, but it's not meaning necessary. So that's where I'm confused, because you're saying it feels necessary to go through this spiritual experience through cultures, but that's just an appeal to tradition. If we appeal to tradition, like women would still be getting maritally raped. Like there's a lot of things that we can appeal. Like there's so many appeals to tradition where they just don't make any sense. Like, I don't necessarily care if a person feels more connected to the animal that they just killed. Like,
so,
where? So you're saying that you're feeling empathy as you just killed an animal. Like, of course, you just killed an animal. It's just like, I understand that there's some physical response to it, and that's going to make you looking into the eyes of a dying animal make you appreciate that they had a life. But that animal does not appreciate that you killed it. So that's what I'm like.
But that animal is dead. That animal doesn't have capacity
we
to
could say that about any human, too. You could say that about any human that got killed. Oh, they're dead.
Yeah.
They don't have any capacity.
Right.
It's like, so if you take that reductio ad absurdum, that's not like a thing that you can lean upon to any capacity. Because first of all, like I said, you use the word necessary for things that are not necessary. It's not necessary to kill an animal. It's not necessary to eat meat to survive.
What if, though?
All essential amino acids are in plants. The animals that we eat, they get their nutrition from plants. The same thing that we eat that's inside of them, they got it from plants. So we could just eat the plants. And any idea that there's like some sort of spiritual experience from killing animals,
have you ever killed an animal, Dre?
No. Oh, well, yes, I have. Yeah, for sure. Like as a kid.
Yeah. What was it?
I mean, like a mouse.
A mouse.
Yeah. Well, I've never like hunted or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that experience doesn't exist. I'm saying that it is still unnecessary suffering. That's what I'm saying. And I'm saying that it is not a philosophy that is becoming of a moral species.
Do you think that if every single person had to go through that experience, though, there would be less overall suffering?
So here's one observation is I would need to like look up any numbers, but a substantial amount of funding that goes towards conservation comes from the hunting community and the permits that come from hunting or fishing, definitely within the state of Minnesota. So that's one observation that just throwing it out there and letting you guys play with it.
Yeah, no, I've heard that before. I don't have a lot of ideas on that.
Yeah.
I haven't looked into it. I usually hear that from people who like to eat a lot of meat. So I'm like, okay. Like, I understand these little arguments, just like there's a spiritual experience from killing an animal and eating meat. I'm like, okay. So I don't have any, I know that that's a fact, or like that's a fact that's thrown out there a lot about where the money comes from, whatever. But that's also like, there's a lot, when there comes to arguments where people have a lot of cognitive dissonance and where they don't want to change their behavior because they understand there's an idea, two beliefs that they have, slash their behavior are not adding up, they start going to like weird extreme situations, and that's an extreme situation where it's like not a lot of people are doing that. So that's not an argument that I care to really look into too much at this point in my life, because right now the vast majority of people are eating food from the grocery store, Cub Foods, whatever we go to, and that's all factory farming. It's like 95% of the meat that people eat in the Western world are factory farmed. So It's like, to bring up some of these extremes that are 5% or less, or is disingenuous to me, because that's not, you just had cheese at Chipotle, you just had something that wasn't vegan at Chipotle, so that's unnecessary suffering, and that's how most people's daily lives are. So some of these extremes are like, if you want to, which is fine, I'm not saying that my philosophy is right and yours is wrong, I'm just poking holes in the philosophy because you guys keep using the word necessary for things that are not necessary. Then you used appeals to tradition to kind of write off some sort of behavior that, yes, I know why people eat meat too. Yes, I know we've been eating it forever. I understand that. And then you used an appeal to nature, which is a very dangerous appeal because there's a lot of things that are natural.
Yeah.
So it's just like,
I agree with all the flaws that you saw in the arguments, just to push back with two thought experiments.
Okay. I like
Number one, everybody is vegan and eats meat from a lab, or like faux meat from a lab, and they eat all of their vegetables from like vertical farms. Does anybody give a shit about the countryside or like wildlife or any sort of, should we care? Like, does anybody in that environment or a significant portion do any of them have a connection enough with the natural environment to support those wildlife or what have you, like trees, everything, when they are living in this like urban utopia in a lot of ways? So that's like the thought experiment number one. Number two would be like, if someone eats no animal products besides ones that are from either their own hunting or their community hunting, or from their small family farm, and it's not like a factory farm, obviously, like that scale, the line that you would draw, that scale, like, does that make them unethical in your eyes? Like, if they are not feeding into the factory farming scenario.
Okay. Number two, the second idea, they're still immoral. They're not necessarily like, so I've heard this, like, people sometimes ask, like, do you think that vegans are more moral? Like, I don't think I'm more moral than anybody. I think that this behavior is a more moral behavior than the opposite, eating meat, eating animal products. I don't think that I'm necessarily more moral than anybody. I just think, yes, you two, I believe, in my philosophy of limiting suffering on Earth, that you two would be more moral if you did not contribute to the unnecessary suffering of animals. Whether you guys are more moral than me overall, I have no idea. That's not a conversation that interests me in this moment. So my answer is, they are immoral, or they are committing an immoral act, because they are still causing unnecessary suffering. All meat eating, unless it's grown from a lab, all meat eating in the Western world, in my viewpoint, in veganism's philosophy, is immoral, because it is unnecessary. You don't need to eat it for any reason in the modern world. Not nutrition, nothing. All of that. First of all essential amino acids can be found in plants. The only thing that has consistently been proven that you do need to supplement is B12. And when you talk about, so it's different when, like I said, when you start talking about extremes, Lauren, of like eating off of your farm, of your hometown or your own barn. That's an extreme that I can't necessarily talk about what's in these animals, how they're treated, whatever. But at the end of the day, if you're ending their lives, cutting their lives short by killing them, that's already getting me unethical. But that's not my point. My point is going back to the supplemental stuff. So B12 needs to be supplemented in vegans. That's a common deficiency. It's the only one that's been repeatedly in scientific studies proven. But also, all of our meat, not all, but 95% of it, whatever the percentage is that is factory farmed, is all supplemented. All these cows, all these things that they call GMOs, all this is supplementation. So all the nutrients that we want to get, they're putting artificially into the food that we're eating. So everybody in the modern world is already supplemented, no matter whether you're having a vitamin or not. Plus, so many scientific studies on nutrition say that we should be taking supplements, that we should be taking, like, everybody needs vitamin D pill. Everybody needs it. So I understand, and I can kind of, Lauren, I can kind of sympathize with a kind of no processed food, not taking supplements. I can understand with that in theory. The no processed food thing is fine, but the no supplements things, I can kind of get with that in theory. But to say that I'm not going to take a vitamin, instead I'm going to kill an animal and commit unnecessary suffering is like such a huge leap in morality that I'm just like, whoa, that is really interesting.
Yeah.
So that's that. And then number one, or the experiment number one, thought experiment number one. So this is number one. I'll point out that you created this society hypothetically, or not, maybe it wasn't you, but you read about this society hypothetically, or sort of this society when we just talked about urbanization, where there was like everybody goes into these major metropolises and everything else is nature. So at that point, you would have to ask that society the same question. Mm-hmm. Like, do we care? Like, so how did we get here if we didn't care about that other nature, right? So it's like, what about, I kind of get the idea of like, oh, hunters are obviously going to care about conservation because they like to hunt. Farmers are going to care about more cows because they want to kill them to make money. I understand that, but if that is...
What? My grandpa loves his cows, not because they make him any money.
But does he kill them to make money?
He loves his cows.
It also...
No, it doesn't really
it provides
profit.
him a lot of meaning.
It provides him a lot of meaning. Very little profit.
That's fine. I'll cede that point. That wasn't very my necessary point. It's less to me why you're killing the cows or why you love them, and just the fact that you're doing it. That's the thing that matters to me. I don't care that you love them, because at the same time, if I loved a dog and then I just killed them one day because I was like, you know what, I think it's just time to go. Like something.
That argument, I think that argument only makes sense if the life already existed, and often the lives that, like, my grandpa is taking care of, he is the one who's responsible for the life existing. So, like, he breeds his cows on his farm. The only reason he continues to have cows is because they're breeded on his farm for that purpose, and therefore, like, he creates the life and takes the life. And so, like, I think your argument is that it's more immoral to take the life than it is to, like, give the life. But if my grandpa were not doing this, none of these lives would exist.
Both are immoral.
Okay.
Yeah, I think. Okay, now we're getting into more it's not. I don't think it's extreme because it's consistent with my philosophy, but it will be more extreme to most people because they haven't heard this. I think that pets, for the most part, are immoral.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying that it would be, like, morally good or better, a better behavior to not produce these lives in the first place.
Specifically, farm animals who are raised to be slaughtered, yes, you should not create those animals. That'd be like, why would I create a kid to raise as a slave? I've created them, so now I have this sovereignty over him. That's the same argument. It's just not a human child. And I get it. I understand speciesism. I understand that we think that we're so much more important than every species. We can do whatever we want with them. and I understand the tradition of Christianity that some people have used, and that's the same tradition that they use for slaves to say, oh, black people should be slaves in America. So all these appeals to tradition this is such a flawed ideology that it's like we need to think a little bit harder and deeper. And if we are just at the point as a species that we just really don't give a shit about these animals, then let's just say it. But don't start like making up a bunch of weird arguments that make no sense.
Oh, I mostly don't give a shit.
Yeah, which is
like
I get
yeah,
that.
I also think that, I mean, everything that I said before is true, but like I mostly don't give a shit. Like, I care about the environment, I care about the globe. I think that we should engage in consumption of meat sustainably, and I don't think we are doing that. I definitely don't think that commercial farming it for meat specifically is moral, and like whenever I have the opportunity to engage in local farming instead, and certainly with my own family and my grandpa, I do. Yeah. But like, yeah, I mostly don't give a shit.
For sure. And I respect that honesty, and that's just where most people are. But there's a cognitive dissonance because we kind of care, right?
Right.
Because we can see that they're mammals. We can see that they give us some sort of joy. We can see that they're experiencing pain just like we do. So there's there's some empathy there. But because we put ourselves and our own taste buds over whatever suffering they're going through, we just don't care. I just care about this more than that.
Yeah, I think the biggest for me cognitive dissonance that I experience is because is in the fact that I hold some species above other species, even of the species that are below humans. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, I grew up riding horses, and the first time that I found out there were people in the world that ate horses, I cried for days.
Definitely.
Days and days. Right. And so I think as an adult now, like, that argument more than any makes me feel the most uncomfortable, probably. But I do also just acknowledge that, yeah, I mostly don't give a shit. And about the vitamins and supplements type organization, that was wrong, argument, yeah, like, my grandpa's beef is not supplemented, and like, I know it's an extreme compared to the population, but like, that is my experience reality. And my reality. Yeah. And so I would not need vitamin B12. In fact, I've not ever grown up taking vitamins of really any sort, because I was raised to try to eat a balanced diet. And I know too, because of like mass farming, they say that I might be missing out on a lot of nutrients that are really important. And for those reasons too, I'm at the farmer's market every Saturday, and I'm doing everything that I can to live sustainably. And even now, like, don't really ever consume, unless it's from my grandpa, I don't consume beef. And like, this past year we didn't get any beef, so I've only been consuming like Impossible Meat or Beyond Meat. So like, I don't think that my behavior is as moral as yours, but I do think my behavior is a hell of a lot moral than most people's. And like, that is what consoles me. That is how I sleep at night. That is how I deal with my cognitive dissonance.
Yeah. And I know that you guys, whenever we talk about veganism off air, you guys have mostly talked about environmental reasons as well, which we just haven't gotten into, which is fine. Like, veganism is like, you can talk for a long time about a lot of things. My thing is, I want to, so when it comes to something like veganism, which I think is a moral imperative, and this is kind of turned, obviously, I don't know if it's like a full-on debate, but it's like there's just like, we're parsing through philosophies, right?
Yeah.
And for me, the reason why I've been comfortable with moving on to any other parts of veganism is because there's things that you guys are saying that to me don't make any sense, and I think to you guys don't make any sense either. But what you just said makes a lot of sense. You care about the environment. You care about your own health and your own taste buds more than you care about this animal. Okay, that's most people. Most people just don't think of it that way. And for me, I can understand that, and that seems true. That seems like an honest description. But I just think humans, we need to be more than that. That's just my thing. Aidan, you've been waiting to chime in.
Oh, yeah, no worries. I think for me, to touch a bit on my background, so I was a member of 4-H, and I grew up bringing chickens and ducks to the county fair that would not have existed without them having been brought into existence through having bred and raised them. And a lot of them were for like family farm egg, like egg production, as well as like exhibition. But beyond that too, what I found a fascinating difference with that as opposed to factory farming is that these animals, like as soon as they stop producing eggs, we let them live. They got to live out their dandy lives, like on the family hobby farm. And for me, that gave me a profound connection with like birds, and now I'm pretty into going out into nature and going for walks and seeking birds and trying to ID them and get to know more about them, and so I care a lot more about the environment in that way. And that's just me talking about my experience. I also know, like, my father, who he really loves fishing. The only time, I mean, he'll go for walks too, and bike rides every now and then, but one of the only thing that gets him to go on a camping adventure up north, which whether or not that's a morally good behavior, I don't know, but like the only thing that gets him to engage with nature is fishing, which there's something deeply, like deep within our like ape brains that makes us want to go out and kill things and like go on these hunts or fishes, right? And I do think that there is something there where that does drive a lot of people's excitement for nature. And so whether or not the death of a fish is necessary for someone to then like drop $2,000 on the bee lab as like a donation to bee conservation, like maybe that one fish was, or however many fish, I mean, obviously we don't really know, or I don't really know, at least, like, are the deaths caused by these sorts of activities worth the connection and investment, the financial investment that comes into these areas that thus protects and proliferates the life of these animals? Like, that's where I personally see like what might be necessary. I just don't know if it is or not. Like if it's like, that's where, and two, coming back to that thought experiment about the like urban utopia kind of like, if we go down that route and nobody's eating any meat through hunting or fishing, like, will the planet become just an urban jungle, and will there be no wilderness? Is that a morally good outcome? Again, I don't know. But that's where I possibly see the, like, where the necessary could come from in terms of the suffering of some animals. I don't think that factory farming is okay, and I agree that I also I mean, I do feel cognitive dissonance. I couldn't tell you the last time I've actually bought meat. What I do partake in is like at family holidays when meat is served. I enjoy it with my family or friends. And then when it comes to yeah, so that's like the one time, or like that's one context I'll partake in consuming meat. But then the other is when like I might be on a backpacking trip and have paid my money to reserve a campsite that theoretically goes towards conserving and maintaining this wilderness area. Like my friend goes out for a morning fish and brings back a brook trout, and I have a bite of it. So like that's where, like, would my friend Brett be as excited about investing his dollars because he is an avid fisherman and hunterman? Would he be investing nearly as much of his energy and time into preservation and proliferation of these areas if he did not hunt or fish? I don't know. So that's like, I guess, where I would see the possible necessity of this suffering. But again, it's like,
what is it necessary to do?
It would be like necessary to, given that we live in an Anthropocene age where humans have an extraordinary impact on the environment,
Mm-hmm.
it would be possibly necessary to inspire investment in these areas.
I like that argument personally. It sounded great.
So that's again, it's something that I've been like debating about and considering. And so like that's where I think I would see like one possible argument for eating meat or animal products in much more moderation than most people do today. Like, yeah, and eating it in the context of where it would lead to the investment and preservation of these wilderness areas.
But we're the ones who destroyed these areas, so they need to be preserved by us. So you're saying because we destroyed them, they need to be preserved, so we need to kill these animals to preserve them?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
Like how many people go up to the Boundary Waters canoe area to go fishing?
There's so many things you can do besides fish in the wilderness. I understand.
How often do you go to the wilderness?
Interest in the Boundary Waters.
How often have you
good, so he doesn't need
how often have you invested your money or time into conservation of
very
natural
rarely,
areas?
just if I here and there if I go camping with M or something, but
yeah,
for like my $7. My thing is with the conservation stuff, and like this is not my expertise, so I'm not like it's interesting.
Again, it's also not mine, so I'm just like,
yeah,
that's where I could maybe see an argument for.
Yeah. So all I can do is poke holes in the logic. So that's all I can do with that. So it's just like there was a time so the only time, so humans just recently have received or attained the power to destroy Earth, to destroy the ecosystem. Am I right? It's relatively recently, right? We agree?
We were just building up to this moment.
No.
Like, yeah. I mean,
you think 4,000 years ago we could have just destroyed the environment?
Like, we have more capacity to do it more quickly, but we've been knocking down trees and starting fires and burning shit down since we discovered fire.
So is lightning, but it's just like that didn't destroy the Earth.
Only recently have we been been capable of drastic changes to the environment.
Okay,
however you define like drastic.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
like,
what do you mean however we define it? We have not just possessed the power to destroy Earth for all of our human history. That's a modern thing.
Yeah.
Because urbanization is what's doing it, correct?
I mean, there's a lot of things that are what's doing it. Urbanization, like fossil fuels in particular.
Right, but all this has to do with these major cities and these collections of people that are desiring way more than they need, right?
Mm-hmm. A lot of people consuming more than what the planet can naturally Yeah.
And these people are usually in urban areas. It's like, whatever. I'm not going to get parsed through all that. That's not as important, but whatever. We can agree that, okay, I guess we can agree that humans for a little while have had the ability to share. So whatever. So my point is, it's not like the earth needs us. So where is this savior complex coming from where it's like, we need to go kill animals to save the earth?
So
like, that's confusing to me.
So I think you're like that, the way that, so I think it's like less necessarily about saving the earth.
Okay.
It's more about the life that exists in these like wilderness areas, or even just your local parks and things.
Okay. So this is an interesting kind of philosophy. So this is like a ends justify the means type of philosophy, which is cool. That's obviously dangerous, but right? Is ends justify the means?
Yeah.
You're saying I get to
the benefits
do this bad thing because this good thing will happen.
Yeah,
right?
Because like, yeah. And again, I'm not saying that this is what's causing it, because I'm just like I'm positing this as a hypothesis.
Yeah,
like,
but these are arguments that people make. There's there seems to be some validity to them. So this is where, I definitely have a desire to like study logic and philosophy to become a more consistent person, because I think it's really important for the advancement of humanity. Specifically, like, I am a transhumanist. I think there's something that will come beyond us, and with a lot of the philosophies that you two are expounding, it's gonna wipe us. Like, if this next thing has the same philosophy as us, it's gonna wipe us out. So it's kind of an interesting idea to be like, which is like, I have it too. Like, of course, like, we're humans.
So here, if this next thing only has to kill some of us, so it stays interested enough in us that it keeps us around, is that a good thing? Like, if this future AI transhumanist like has to come out and hunt some of us so it continues to have an appreciation for the human species.
Yeah. So
it lets us survive rather than eliminating us completely.
Oh, I don't really mind if it if it eats us.
As long as it doesn't eat you.
No, it can eat me.
As long as it doesn't eat all of us.
No, it could eat all of us.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more of a I don't care if it eats everybody, but don't eat me. That's mostly how I feel about it. But yeah, no, I get it. I mean, yeah, that's a more morally consistent and morally honest argument than most would make. It's just, that's fine. I mean, that's more of a nihilistic argument, but I don't know. It's interesting. So with you, Aidan, in these arguments about eating animals to save them, and then just finding the means, can you agree though that that's a very dangerous philosophy to have, right? Apart from animals, just ends justifying the means.
I think that sometimes, like, it's dangerous.
Any overt philosophy is dangerous at times. Like, I mean, it doesn't matter what philosophy you have.
It would depend on the context, because I think that sometimes, I mean, I think about quarantining, for example, during the middle of the Black Plague. Like, is quarantining a village where almost everybody will die in order to preserve
the greater population.
Yeah, that's a good argument.
That would be the ends justifying the means, I suppose.
I think, obviously utilitarianism would say that's right. That's interesting. What would you do? Would you quarantine them?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the problem is with that is that you don't necessarily, like, in a hypothetical, I guess, but in practicality, you don't necessarily know what's going to happen.
Oh yeah.
So that's where it gets really dangerous practicality. But yeah, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I respect that. I respect
It would
that
be a game
you guys
time
would just
decision,
wipe out those
but-
1,000 people. Because that's kind of like the classic philosophy 101 argument. It's like, if you're on a train, you're about to kill 5 people, will you turn the lever so that you are now responsible for killing 4 people? You're killing less people, but now you're responsible. And I think in general, people tend to be like, nah, like I'm not pulling the lever. Even though it's saved
Even though, yeah.
one more life, I'm now responsible.
Right.
But utilitarianism, or even ends justify the means, you should pull the lever.
Yeah.
Interesting idea. All right,
Well,
wrap us up.
health scientists, I hope that this cast challenged you. It certainly challenged me. And I hope that at the very least, we didn't get to talk about any of our favorite vegan recipes or anything of that nature. And I had
a whole thing about Pythagoras.
Yeah, I had some fun stuff, but
Impossible burger.
if you
Oh,
haven't
true.
spent much time
we didn't talk
thinking
about
about veganism or about the content of your diet, about these moral grounds, like I hope at the very least what this conversation enlightened you of is that for even people like myself who might buy meat or get it from my grandpa, and Aidan who might eat it at a family gathering, and then Dre who doesn't partake in any animal product use except for what may or may not have already been in his closet prior to veganism. I hope that it pushed you to consider, what is my argument? Do I have moral grounds for living the life that I'm living right now? And do I feel okay with that? Or do I maybe need to make a change? Or do I maybe need to consider something a little bit different? And in that, I hope that your research as common scientist goes well and you're able to find a little light in your own cognitive dissonance, in your own tunnel, in your own world. And I'm sure we'll revisit the topic in a later cast. But until then, common scientists, it's up to you.
Hey Common Scientists, hope you enjoyed the cast. Thanks for investing in common science. We hope it brought as much value to you as it did to us.
To learn more, smash the subscribe button and visit our website, commonscientists.com, where you can read our blog, join our email newsletter, and follow us on social media.
Finally, if you like what we have to say, you can absolutely support us on Patreon. We could always use more support. You can navigate there also from our website, commonscientists.com, common scientists with an S, so that we can continue cultivating a community of common scientists.